The dust cloud rose like a funeral shroud behind the departing wagon train, and Hannah Kimball stood frozen in the middle of the trail, her chest heaving with panic as she watched her only means of survival disappear into the shimmering heat of the Nebraska plains on that merciless afternoon in July of 1867. She had wandered too far from camp that morning, searching for wild herbs by the creek bed, and when she heard the crack of whips and the rumble of wheels, she had run as fast as her legs could carry her, but it was not fast enough. The wagon master had a schedule to keep, and one foolish young woman was not worth delaying the entire train. Her aunt and uncle were on that train, the only family she had left after her parents died of cholera the previous winter in St. Louis. They had taken her in reluctantly, made that clear from the start, and now they had left her behind without so much as a backward glance. Hannah sank to her knees in the dirt, her cotton dress already soaked through with sweat, her bonnet hanging loose around her neck. The Nebraska sun beat down mercilessly, and she knew with terrible certainty that she would die out here alone. No water, no food, no weapon to defend herself. She was 22 years old, and her life was about to end in the most pathetic way imaginable. The sound of hoofbeats made her head snap up. Through the wavering heat, she saw a rider approaching from the west, leading a pack horse behind him. Hannah scrambled to her feet, brushing the dust from her skirts, her heart hammering with equal parts hope and fear. Out here, a stranger could be salvation or damnation, and there was no way to know which until it was too late. The rider slowed as he approached, and Hannah found herself staring up at a man who looked like he had been carved from the very landscape around them. He was tall and lean, sitting easy in the saddle, with sun-bronzed skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. His eyes were the color of a stormy sky, gray and penetrating, and they took in her situation with one quick, assessing glance. "You are in a bad way," he said, his voice low and rough like gravel underfoot. It was not a question. "The wagon train," Hannah managed, her voice cracking from thirst. "They left without me." The cowboy looked down the trail where the dust was still settling, then back at her. Something flickered across his face, might have been anger or disgust, but it passed quickly. He swung down from his horse in one fluid motion and pulled a canteen from his saddle. "Drink slow," he instructed, handing it to her. "You will make yourself sick otherwise." Hannah took the canteen with shaking hands and pressed it to her lips. The water was warm and tasted faintly of metal, but it was the most beautiful thing she had ever experienced. She forced herself to take small sips, even though her body screamed for more. "Thank you," she whispered when she finally lowered the canteen. "Thank you so much." The cowboy took the canteen back and studied her with those steady gray eyes. "How long you been standing out here?" "Maybe an hour." "I went to gather herbs by the creek this morning, and when I came back they were already moving. I ran, but I could not catch up. And they did not come back for you." It was not a question, but Hannah answered anyway. "No." The cowboy's jaw tightened and he looked away, scanning the horizon in all directions. The plains stretched endlessly, golden grass rippling in the hot wind with not a tree or building in sight. "You got people on that train." "My aunt and uncle. They took me in after my parents died, but—" Hannah trailed off, not wanting to admit how little they had cared for her. But they did not care enough to wait. The cowboy finished the thought for her, and there was an edge to his voice that made Hannah look at him more carefully. He wore dusty leather chaps over dark trousers, a worn blue shirt, and a gun belt that sat low on his hips. His hat was pulled low against the sun, shading his face, but she could see the hard set of his mouth, the tension in his shoulders. "What is your name?" he asked suddenly. "Hannah." "Hannah Kimball." "Samuel Foster," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Most people call me Sam." Mr. Foster, I do not know what to do, Hannah admitted, and to her horror she felt tears burning behind her eyes. I have nothing. No supplies, no horse, no money. I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but if you could just point me toward the nearest town. Nearest town is Fort Kearney, about 15 miles east, Sam interrupted. You would not make it 3 miles on foot in this heat, not without water and supplies. He was quiet for a moment, his hand resting on his horse's neck, and Hannah could practically see him weighing his options. Finally, he looked at her directly, and his expression had softened just slightly. You will travel with me now. Hannah's breath caught. I could not possibly impose. It is not an imposition. It is survival. Sam moved to his pack horse and began rearranging the supplies strapped there. I am headed to Silverton, Colorado. Got work waiting there, managing a ranch. It is a long journey, maybe 6 weeks, but I can get you there safe, and there are opportunities for women in a growing town like that. You can start fresh. Colorado, Hannah breathed. It seemed impossibly far away, a different world entirely. Mr. Foster, I cannot pay you. I have nothing to offer in return. Sam glanced at her over his shoulder. I am not asking for payment. I am offering basic human decency, which seems to be in short supply on that wagon train of yours. He freed up enough space to fit another rider on his main horse. Can you ride? Yes, my father taught me when I was young. Good. We will ride double until we get to Fort Kearney. I can purchase another horse there and some supplies for you. Sam turned fully to face her. This is not charity, Miss Kimball. You will earn your keep. You can cook, I assume? Yes. And mend clothes. Handle basic camp tasks, of course. Then we have a fair arrangement. I provide transportation and protection. You provide cooking and camp work. When we get to Silverton, we part ways as friends and you start your new life. Agreed. Hannah felt something loosen in her chest, the iron band of fear that had been squeezing her lungs since she watched the wagon train disappear. This stranger was offering her not just survival, but a future. Agreed, she said, and her voice was steadier now. Thank you, Mr. Foster, truly. Sam, he corrected. If we are traveling together for 6 weeks, we might as well use given names. He led his horse closer and held out his hand. Come on. We will ride for a few hours before making camp. I want to put some distance between us and this place. Hannah took his hand, surprised by the calluses she felt there, the strength in his grip as he helped her mount. She settled into the saddle, and then Sam swung up behind her, his arms coming around on either side as he took the reins. Hannah stiffened at the proximity, suddenly very aware that she was pressed against a strange man's chest, but Sam seemed entirely unaffected. Relax, he said quietly. I am not going to let you fall. They rode east at a steady pace, the afternoon sun slowly sinking toward the horizon. Hannah tried to hold herself away from Sam's body at first, but the movement of the horse made it impossible, and eventually she gave up and let herself lean back slightly. He was solid and warm behind her, and despite everything, she felt safe. Tell me about Silverton, she said after a while, wanting to break the silence. Mining town, mostly silver, up in the San Juan Mountains, Sam replied. Growing fast. The railroad is pushing through that part of Colorado, bringing more people every month. It is rough country, but there are opportunities for anyone willing to work hard. And you have work waiting there, managing a cattle operation for a man named John Fletcher. He owns a ranch in the valley below the town. I worked for him 5 years back before I went north to Montana. He wrote me last spring, said he needed someone he could trust to run things. His son was supposed to take over, but he died in a mining accident 2 years ago. That is terrible, Hannah said softly. It is the way of things out here, Sam said, but there was something in his tone that suggested he felt the loss more than he let on. People die young. Accidents, disease, violence. You learn not to count on tomorrow. They rode in silence for a while longer. Hannah watched the landscape roll past, the endless grass dotted occasionally with wildflowers, the sky so vast and blue it hurt to look at. She had been heading west with her aunt and uncle toward California, where they planned to buy farmland in the Central Valley. Now she was heading to Colorado with a stranger, and her future was completely unwritten. "Why did you stop?" she asked suddenly. "When you saw me standing there, you could have just ridden past." Sam did not answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. 6 years ago, I was working a cattle drive up to Abilene. We came across a wagon on the trail, burned out, everyone dead except for a little girl, maybe 8 years old. She had hidden under the wagon bed during the attack. We took her to the nearest fort, made sure she was cared for, but I have always wondered what happened to her. If someone took her in, if she survived. He paused. When I saw you standing there in the middle of nowhere, I thought, here is a chance to do better. To not just ride past someone who needs help. Hannah felt her throat tighten with emotion. I am glad you are a man who stops. Some days I am not sure if it is a virtue or a weakness. They reached Fort Kearney just before sunset. The military outpost sat like a lonely island in the sea of grass, its wooden buildings weathered and worn by the constant wind. Sam rode straight to the trading post, where they purchased basic supplies. A bedroll for Hannah, a small cooking pot, some beans and coffee and salt pork, and a sturdy bay mare that looked gentle enough for a woman to handle. The trader, a whiskered old man with suspicious eyes, looked between Hannah and Sam with obvious assumptions. "You two married?" he asked bluntly. "No," Sam said flatly. "The lady was abandoned by her wagon train. I am escorting her to Colorado." The trader grunted, clearly not believing a word of it, but he took Sam's money readily enough. Hannah felt her face burning with embarrassment, knowing what the man thought, but she held her head high as they left the trading post. They made camp a few miles west of the fort, near a small stream that cut through the prairie. Sam showed Hannah how to set up her bedroll and where to place it in relation to the fire, far enough away to avoid sparks, but close enough for warmth when the temperature dropped at night. "I will teach you as we go," Sam said, crouching by the fire ring he had built from stones. "How to rid the land, where to find water, how to protect yourself. If you are going to make it out here, you need to know these things." Hannah nodded, grateful and overwhelmed in equal measure. She took the salt pork and beans Sam handed her and set about preparing their supper, using the skills her mother had taught her years ago. It felt good to have a purpose, to be useful after months of being treated as a burden by her aunt and uncle. As the stars emerged overhead, impossibly bright and numerous, they ate in companionable silence. Hannah found herself studying Sam across the fire, watching the way the flames cast shadows across his face, highlighting the strong line of his jaw, the slight crook in his nose that suggested it had been broken at least once. "You are staring," Sam said without looking up from his plate. Hannah felt her face flush. "I apologize. I was just thinking that I know nothing about you, and yet I have put my life in your hands." Sam did look up then, meeting her eyes. "What do you want to know? Where are you from? Do you have family?" "I grew up in Texas, near San Antonio. My father was a rancher, had a good spread, but he lost it all in a card game when I was 16. My mother died of heartbreak not long after, or maybe it was pneumonia, but I think it was really heartbreak. My father drank himself to death within a year." Sam poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. "I have been working cattle and horses ever since, moving from place to place, never staying too long. That sounds lonely." "It is practical. I am good at what I do and people pay well for good work. But yes, I suppose it is lonely too. He glanced at her. What about you? What were you planning to do in California? I was not planning anything. I was just following my aunt and uncle because I had nowhere else to go. Hannah set down her empty plate. My father was a schoolteacher in St. Louis, and my mother took in sewing. We were not wealthy, but we were happy. Then the cholera came through, and within 2 weeks they were both gone. My aunt is my mother's sister, but she never liked my father, thought my mother married beneath her. She took me in out of obligation, not love. And then left you to die in the middle of Nebraska. Yes. Sam shook his head, his expression dark. Some people do not deserve the blessings they have been given. They talked a while longer, their conversation drifting from topic to topic, and Hannah found herself relaxing in Sam's presence. He was direct and plain-spoken, but there was a kindness underneath his rough exterior, a decency that made her trust him despite having known him for less than a day. When Hannah finally lay down in her bedroll, staring up at the river of stars overhead, she felt something she had not felt in a very long time. Hope. The next morning they rose before dawn and were on the trail by first light. Sam set a steady pace, not pushing too hard but making consistent progress across the prairie. He taught Hannah how to read the position of the sun for direction, how to spot signs of water from a distance by watching where birds congregated, how to tell good grass from bad. "You are a good teacher," Hannah said on their third day out. They were riding side by side now, Hannah on her bay mare and Sam on his big roan gelding. "I have spent a lot of years learning to survive out here. Might as well pass it on." As the days turned into weeks, they fell into an easy rhythm. Sam would scout ahead while Hannah broke camp in the mornings. Then they would ride until midday, rest during the worst heat, and cover more ground in the late afternoon. Hannah proved to be an excellent camp cook, making their simple supplies into surprisingly good meals, and she learned quickly how to handle the horses and maintain their gear. But more than the practical skills, Hannah found herself drawn to Sam's company. He was not much for small talk, but when he did speak, he had interesting things to say. He knew the names of the plants and animals they encountered, could read weather patterns in the clouds, and had a seemingly endless supply of stories from his years on the trail. For his part, Sam found himself looking forward to their evening conversations by the fire. Hannah was intelligent and curious, with a quick wit that caught him off guard. She asked thoughtful questions and actually listened to his answers. She did not complain about the hardships of the journey, even when they crossed stretches of country where water was scarce and the heat was punishing. They crossed into Colorado territory in early August, leaving the flat prairies behind for rolling hills that gradually gave way to mountains. The landscape changed dramatically, pines replacing grass, rocky peaks piercing the sky in every direction. "It is beautiful," Hannah breathed one evening as they made camp with a view of the mountains painted orange and gold by the setting sun. "It is that," Sam agreed. He was rubbing down the horses, but he paused to look at the view. "I have traveled a lot of miles, but I always come back to these mountains. There is something about them that feels like home." Hannah turned to look at him. "Do you think you will stay in Silverton this time? Stop wandering?" Sam continued his work on the horses, not meeting her eyes. "I do not know. I have never been very good at staying put." Something in his tone made Hannah's chest tighten, but she did not push the subject. Instead, she busied herself with starting the fire, trying to ignore the growing awareness that their journey would end soon, and when it did, she and Sam would part ways. The thought troubled her more than it should. They were 5 days outside of Silverton when trouble found them. They had camped near a creek in a narrow valley, the mountains rising steep on either side. Hannah was washing their dinner dishes when she heard voices and looked up to see 3 men riding into their camp. Sam was on his feet instantly, his hand hovering near his gun. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" The leader of the group, a barrel-chested man with a thick black beard, grinned unpleasantly. "Just saw your fire, thought we would stop by and be friendly. We have been on the trail a long time and we could use some of that coffee I smell." "We are running low on supplies," Sam said evenly. "But I can spare you some. Then I would appreciate it if you moved along." The bearded man's eyes slid to Hannah and his grin widened. "That is not very neighborly. What about your woman there? Maybe she would be more welcoming." "The lady is under my protection," Sam said, and his voice had gone flat and dangerous. "You will speak respectfully or not at all." The other 2 men had fanned out slightly, and Hannah realized with a spike of fear that this was not a friendly encounter. These men were looking for trouble, and they thought they had found easy targets. "Your protection," the bearded man repeated mockingly. "Well now, maybe the lady wants different protection. Maybe she is tired of traveling with one broke cowboy when she could have 3 men to look after her." "Leave," Sam said quietly. "Right now, do not make me ask again." The bearded man laughed and reached for his gun. He was fast, but Sam was faster. In one fluid motion, Sam drew and fired, and the bearded man's gun went flying from his hand with a howl of pain. The other 2 men froze, their hands still on their weapons. "The next shot will not be aimed at his gun," Sam said, his weapon now trained on the second man. "You have 3 seconds to ride out of here, and if I ever see any of you again, I will not be so generous." The men did not need to be told twice. The bearded man clutched his bleeding hand as he scrambled back onto his horse, and all 3 of them galloped away into the gathering darkness, their curses echoing off the valley walls. Sam holstered his gun and turned to Hannah. "Are you all right?" Hannah realized she was shaking. "Yes, that was frightening. I am sorry. I should have been more careful about where we camped. This valley is too enclosed, too easy for someone to ride in unannounced." "You protected me," Hannah said, moving closer to him. "You did not have to." "You could have just let them know," Sam interrupted sharply. "I could not have. Hannah, I would never let anyone hurt you. Do you understand that?" There was something in his eyes, an intensity that made Hannah's breath catch. They were standing very close now, close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Sam," she whispered, and she was not entirely sure what she was asking for, but it did not matter because Sam stepped back, putting distance between them. "We should pack up and move to a different location," he said, his voice once again controlled and practical. "I do not think they will come back tonight, but I would rather not take chances." They rode for another hour in the dark, following the creek, until they found a more defensible position with good visibility in all directions. Sam insisted on taking the entire watch himself, and Hannah did not argue, though she lay awake in her bedroll for a long time, listening to the night sounds and thinking about the moment when Sam had looked at her with such fierce protectiveness in his eyes. Something had shifted between them. Some unspoken boundary had been crossed, and Hannah did not know what it meant or what to do about it. The next few days were awkward. Sam became more distant, more formal, as if he was trying to re-establish the boundaries of their arrangement. Hannah felt the loss of their easy companionship like a physical ache, but she did not know how to bridge the gap that had opened between them. They reached Silverton on a warm afternoon in late August. The town sat in a valley surrounded by towering peaks, a collection of wooden buildings that seemed to be expanding by the day. The main street was crowded with miners, ranchers, merchants, and all the various people drawn to a booming frontier town. Sam led them straight to the hotel. You will stay here while I go meet with John Fletcher, he said, helping her down from her horse. I will pay for a room and a bath. You can rest and clean up. Sam, you do not have to, Hannah, please. He looked at her, and there was something raw in his expression. Let me do this. After everything you have been through, you deserve a soft bed and a hot meal. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Sam went inside and arranged for a room, then carried her few belongings upstairs. At the door, he paused. I will come back this evening, he said. We can have dinner, and I will help you figure out your next steps. There are opportunities here for a woman like you. The new school is looking for a teacher, and I know the owner of the general store is looking for someone to help with bookkeeping. You already looked into jobs for me. I asked around when we stopped at the last town. I wanted to make sure you would be taken care of. Sam looked down at his hands, then back at her. Hannah, these past weeks traveling with you have been some of the best of my life. I want you to know that. I want you to know that you matter. Before Hannah could respond, Sam turned and walked away, his boots echoing on the wooden floorboards. Hannah stood in the doorway of her room, her heart pounding, and realized with sudden, crystal clarity that she had fallen in love with him. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying to process the revelation. Somewhere between being abandoned in the Nebraska dust and riding into this Colorado mining town, she had given her heart to a wandering cowboy who had saved her life. A man who was planning to leave her here and ride off to his ranch job, probably never to see her again. Hannah went into her room and closed the door, then sat on the edge of the bed and let herself cry. She cried for her parents, for the aunt and uncle who had abandoned her, for the future she had been building in her mind during those weeks on the trail with Sam. She cried until she had no tears left, and then she washed her face, straightened her spine, and decided that she would not go down without a fight. If Sam Foster thought he could just walk away from what they had built together, he had another thing coming. That evening, Hannah put on the one good dress she owned, a dark green cotton that had survived the journey relatively intact. She washed her hair in the bathwater the hotel provided and pinned it up carefully. When she looked in the small mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her face had been tanned by the sun, and there was a strength in her expression that had not been there before. Sam arrived promptly at 7, looking uncomfortable in a clean shirt and with his hair still damp from washing. His eyes widened when he saw Hannah. "You look beautiful," he said, then seemed to realize what he had said and cleared his throat. "I mean, you look well rested." "Thank you," Hannah said, deciding to take it as the compliment he had originally intended. "Shall we go to dinner?" They ate at the hotel restaurant, a simple but well-prepared meal of roast beef and potatoes. Sam told her about his meeting with John Fletcher, how the ranch was thriving and the job was everything he had hoped for. Hannah told him about the room at the hotel, the luxury of a real bath, how strange it felt to be inside 4 walls again after so many nights under the stars. But beneath the small talk, there was tension, unspoken words hovering between them like ghosts. Finally, as they finished their meal, Hannah could not stand it anymore. "Sam, what happens now?" she asked directly. "You go to the ranch, I find a job here, and we just never see each other again." Sam looked down at his plate. "Hannah, I do not know what you want me to say." "I want you to say what you are actually thinking, what you are actually feeling." Hannah leaned forward. "Sam, I know I was just a responsibility you took on, a woman in need who you helped because you are a good man, but these past weeks have meant something to me. They have meant everything." "They have meant everything to me too," Sam said quietly. "That is the problem." "Why is that a problem?" Sam finally met her eyes, and there was anguish in his expression. "Because I have nothing to offer you, Hannah. I am a ranch hand with no property, no savings, no prospects beyond the next job. You deserve someone stable, someone who can give you a real home, a future. You deserve better than a man who has spent his whole life drifting from place to place. What if I do not want better? Hannah reached across the table and took his hand. What if I want you? Sam's hand tightened on hers, and for a moment, Hannah thought he might pull her into his arms right there in the hotel dining room. But then he gently extracted his hand and shook his head. You do not know what you are saying. You have been through a trauma and I happened to be there. You are confusing gratitude with something else. Do not tell me what I am feeling, Hannah said, her voice sharpening with anger. I am 22 years old, Sam, not a child. I know the difference between gratitude and love. The word hung in the air between them, and Sam flinched as if she had struck him. Hannah, I love you, she said clearly. I love the way you taught me to read the stars. I love how you never made me feel weak or foolish for not knowing how to survive out here. I love your stories and your quiet strength, and the way you look at the mountains as if they are old friends. I love that you stopped when you could have just ridden past. I love you, Sam Foster, and I do not think that is going to change just because you are afraid. Sam stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Several other diners looked over, but Hannah did not care. I am going to check on the horses, Sam said roughly. I will see you in the morning before I head out to the ranch. He left before Hannah could respond. She sat alone at the table, her heart hammering, wondering if she had just made a terrible mistake by laying her feelings bare. Hannah did not sleep much that night. She lay in her comfortable hotel bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying their conversation over and over. She had taken a risk, been honest about her feelings, and Sam had walked away. Maybe he was right. Maybe she was confusing gratitude with love. Maybe she was a foolish woman chasing after a man who did not want her. But deep down, she did not believe that. She had seen the way Sam looked at her when he thought she was not watching. She had felt the care in every action he took to keep her safe and teach her what she needed to know. Sam cared for her, might even love her, but he was too trapped by his own beliefs about what he had to offer to let himself have what he wanted. In the morning, Hannah dressed and went downstairs, determined to make one more attempt. But the desk clerk informed her that Sam Foster had already left, ridden out before dawn to the Fletcher ranch. Hannah felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. He had not even said goodbye. She wandered out into the street, feeling lost and hollow. After everything they had been through, after all those weeks of traveling together, sharing their stories, building something real between them, Sam had just left without a word. Hannah spent the next few days in a haze. She went through the motions of looking for work, meeting with the school teacher who was organizing the new school, talking to the owner of the general store about bookkeeping. Everyone was friendly and welcoming, and by the end of the week, she had a job offer from the school and a boarding situation arranged with a nice widow named Mrs. Patterson who had a room to rent. It was everything she needed to start her new life. So why did it feel like she had lost everything that mattered? A week after Sam left, Hannah was walking back to the hotel when she saw a familiar figure standing outside the general store. Her heart leaped and she quickened her pace, but as she got closer, she realized it was not Sam but an older man with similar features, the same gray eyes and strong jaw. "Excuse me," the man said, touching his hat. "I am looking for a Miss Hannah Kimball." "The hotel clerk said I might find her here. I am Hannah Kimball." The man's weathered face broke into a smile. "John Fletcher, madam. I own the Double F Ranch outside of town. I believe you know my new foreman, Sam Foster." Hannah's heart started to race. "Is he all right? Did something happen?" "He is fine, physically speaking, but he has been about as useful as a three-legged horse this past week, moping around and doing everything wrong. Finally, I cornered him yesterday and made him tell me what was eating at him. Took some doing, but I got the whole story out of him. About how he found you in Nebraska, brought you here, and then walked away from the best thing that ever happened to him because he thinks he does not deserve happiness. Hannah's eyes burned with tears. He said that, not in so many words. Sam is not much for expressing his feelings. But I have known that boy for 6 years, and I have never seen him like this over a woman. John Fletcher studied her carefully. He is in love with you, Miss Kimball, but he has convinced himself that he is not good enough for you. I am here to tell you that is nonsense. Sam Foster is one of the finest men I know, honest and hard-working and true to his word. If you have feelings for him too, I think you should come out to the ranch and tell him so. He walked away from me, Hannah said, her voice breaking. He left without even saying goodbye. Because he is a damn fool. But he is a damn fool in love, and those can be redeemed if the right woman is willing to fight for him. Fletcher smiled gently. What do you say, Miss Kimball? Will you fight for him? Hannah wiped her eyes and straightened her shoulders. Yes, yes, I will. Fletcher provided a horse and directions to the ranch, which was about an hour's ride south of town. Hannah changed into her riding clothes and set out immediately, her heart pounding with equal parts hope and fear. What if Sam still refused her? What if Fletcher was wrong about his feelings? But she had to try. She had not survived being abandoned in Nebraska and crossed hundreds of miles of dangerous country just to give up now. The Double F Ranch was beautiful, nestled in a valley with good grass and a clear stream running through it. The main house was a sprawling structure of logs and stone, and there were several outbuildings, corrals filled with horses and cattle grazing on the hillsides. Hannah spotted Sam immediately. He was in one of the corrals, working with a young horse, his movements patient and skilled. He had not seen her yet, and she took a moment to just watch him, her heart aching with how much she loved this man. Then Sam turned and saw her. He froze, the horse's lead rope still in his hand, his expression going through a rapid series of changes from shock to hope to fear. Hannah dismounted and walked to the corral fence. "Hello, Sam, Hannah." His voice was rough. "What are you doing here? John Fletcher came to town. He told me you have been miserable." Sam's jaw tightened. "Fletcher talks too much, or maybe you do not talk enough." Hannah gripped the fence rail. "Sam, you left without saying goodbye. After everything we shared all those weeks on the trail, you just left. I thought it would be easier for both of us." "Well, you were wrong. It has not been easier. It has been awful." Hannah took a deep breath. "Sam, I meant what I said at the hotel. I love you. And I do not care that you are a ranch hand with no property. I do not care that you have been drifting your whole life. What I care about is that you are kind and strong and honorable. What I care about is that you make me feel safe and seen and valued. What I care about is building a life with you, whatever that looks like." Sam tied off the horse and climbed over the corral fence in one fluid motion, landing right in front of her. His eyes searched her face as if he was trying to memorize every detail. "Hannah, I am terrified," he admitted. "I have never let myself care about someone the way I care about you. I have never let myself want something so much. And I am terrified that I will disappoint you, that I will not be enough, that you will wake up one day and realize you made a mistake." "Those are all possibilities," Hannah said honestly. "But you know what terrifies me more? Living my whole life wondering what could have been. Never taking the risk, never knowing if we could have been happy together." She reached up and cupped his face in her hands. "Sam, I know you are scared. I am scared too, but I would rather be scared with you than safe without you." Sam closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. When he opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. "I love you," he whispered. "God help me, Hannah, I love you so much. and then he was kissing her, his arms wrapping around her and pulling her close, and Hannah felt everything inside her settle into place. This was right. This was home. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Sam rested his forehead against hers. "I do not have much," he said, "but what I have is yours. My heart, my future, everything, if you will have me." "I will have you," Hannah said, smiling through her tears. "I will absolutely have you." Sam kissed her again, softer this time, and Hannah felt the last of her fear melt away. They had a future now together, and that was everything she needed. John Fletcher emerged from the main house and saw them standing there wrapped in each other's arms. He grinned broadly and called out, "Well, it is about damn time. Sam, when you are done kissing your girl, we have work to do. And Miss Kimball, you are welcome to stay for dinner. I want to hear all about this journey that brought you two together." They ate dinner that night at the big table in the ranch house, and Hannah told Fletcher the whole story, from being left behind by the wagon train to their journey across Nebraska and Colorado. Fletcher listened with interest, asking questions and laughing at the right moments. "You two have been through quite an adventure," he said when she finished. "Seems to me you are good for each other. Sam needs someone to make him stop drifting, and Hannah, you need someone who will never leave you behind." "That is my promise," Sam said, taking Hannah's hand across the table. "I will never leave you behind. Where I go, you go if you are willing." "I am willing," Hannah said softly. Fletcher leaned back in his chair, looking pleased. "Well then, we need to talk practical matters. Sam, you are my foreman, and this ranch does well enough to support a family. There is a cabin on the property, been sitting empty for a few years, but it is sound. Needs some fixing up, but it could be a good home for a married couple." Hannah felt her face flush. "Sir, we have not even discussed marriage." "Well, why not?" Fletcher looked between them. "You are both of age, you clearly love each other, and this is the frontier. People do not wait around forever out here. Life is too short and too uncertain." Sam squeezed Hannah's hand. "He is right. Hannah, I know this is fast, but I do not want to wait. I have spent too many years alone, and now that I have found you, I do not want to waste another day. Will you marry me?" Hannah's heart soared. "Yes. Yes, Sam, I will marry you." They were married 2 weeks later in the small church in Silverton. Mrs. Patterson and several of the other townswomen helped Hannah prepare, providing her with a simple but beautiful white dress and flowers for her hair. Fletcher stood up as Sam's witness, and a schoolteacher named Miss Andrews stood up for Hannah. As they exchanged vows, Hannah looked into Sam's eyes and saw her entire future reflected there. It was not the future she had imagined 6 weeks ago when she was following her aunt and uncle to California. It was better. The cabin Fletcher had mentioned needed significant work, but they threw themselves into fixing it up together. Sam repaired the roof and walls while Hannah cleaned and made curtains and slowly turned the bare structure into a home. Fletcher gave them some basic furniture from the ranch house, and Hannah used some of her first wages from part-time teaching at the school to buy fabric and supplies. By the time fall arrived, painting the mountains in gold and red, the cabin was cozy and warm. They had a real bed, a table and chairs Sam had built himself, a stove for cooking and heating, and even a small bookshelf that Hannah was slowly filling with volumes borrowed from the Silverton Lending Library. Their life fell into a comfortable rhythm. Sam worked the ranch during the day, managing the cattle and horses, supervising the other hands, and handling the business side of things for Fletcher. Hannah taught at the school 3 days a week, and spent the other days keeping their home and helping some of the ranch families with various tasks. The first winter was hard. The snow in the mountains was deeper than Hannah had ever imagined, and there were weeks when they were essentially trapped in their cabin. But Sam kept them well supplied with firewood, and Hannah became an expert at making their food stores stretch. They spent long evenings by the fire, talking and reading and planning their future. "You ever miss it?" Sam asked one night as they lay in bed, the wind howling outside. "The life you thought you would have in California?" Hannah considered the question. "Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like. But no, I do not miss it. I am exactly where I want to be. Even when you are stuck in a cabin in a blizzard with a cowboy who tracks snow in on his boots." Hannah laughed and snuggled closer to him. "Especially then." Spring came eventually, as it always does, and with it came new life. The cattle gave birth to healthy calves, the horses had foals, and Hannah discovered she was pregnant. "We are going to have a baby," she told Sam one evening when he came home from work. She had been planning how to tell him all day, but in the end, she just blurted it out. Sam's face went through a series of expressions before settling on pure joy. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing. "A baby! Hannah, we are going to have a baby." Their son was born in January of 1869, during another fierce mountain winter. The midwife from town stayed with them for 3 days, and Fletcher checked in constantly, bringing supplies and encouragement. When Hannah finally held her baby boy in her arms, she wept with happiness. "What should we name him?" Sam asked, gently touching his son's tiny hand. "William," Hannah said. "After my father." "William Foster," Sam said, testing the name. "It is perfect." Watching Sam with William over the following months and years was one of the greatest joys of Hannah's life. He was a patient, devoted father, teaching his son about horses and cattle, about reading the land and respecting nature. He built William a small rocking horse when the boy was 2, and later a miniature saddle for when he was old enough to ride. Hannah continued teaching part-time, and she and Sam became pillars of the growing Silverton community. They helped organize church functions and school events, and their cabin became a gathering place for other young families on the ranch and in town. 3 years after William was born, they had a daughter they named Rose, after Sam's mother. Rose had her father's gray eyes and her mother's dark hair, and from the moment she could walk, she was following her big brother everywhere. "We are blessed," Sam said one evening as they watched their children playing in the yard while the sun set over the mountains. "I never thought I would have this. A family, a home, a place to belong." "You were always meant for this," Hannah said, leaning against him. "You just needed to stop running long enough to see it." John Fletcher passed away peacefully in his sleep in the spring of 1873, leaving the ranch to Sam with the provision that it continue to be called the Double F in memory of Fletcher and his late son. Sam was overwhelmed by the gift, and he worked even harder to honor Fletcher's legacy. Under Sam's management, the ranch thrived. He hired good men, treated them fairly, and built a reputation for quality cattle and horses. Hannah expanded her teaching, eventually helping to establish a permanent school building in Silverton with a full curriculum. Over the years, they faced their share of challenges. There were harsh winters, drought years, and market downturns. They weathered illness and injuries, losses and setbacks. But through it all, they had each other, and that made every hardship bearable. William grew into a strong, capable young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Rose developed a passion for teaching and eventually took over Hannah's position at the school. In 1887, William married a rancher's daughter named Catherine, and a year later, they presented Sam and Hannah with their first grandchild, a boy they named Samuel after his grandfather. "We are grandparents," Hannah said, holding baby Samuel for the first time. "When did we get so old?" "Speak for yourself," Sam said, but his hair was gray now, and his hands were gnarled from years of hard work. Still, his eyes were bright when he looked at his wife and his growing family. On a warm summer evening in 1892, Sam and Hannah sat on the porch of their cabin, watching the sun paint the mountains gold and purple. They were both in their late 40s now, their children grown, their grandchildren thriving. "You remember the day we met?" Hannah asked, her hand in Sam's. "Every detail," Sam said. "You standing there in the dust, looking lost and scared. I knew right then that my life was about to change." "Did you really?" "Maybe not right then," Sam admitted with a small smile. "But by the end of that first day, when you climbed up on my horse and trusted me to take you somewhere safe, I knew you were special." "I was so frightened," Hannah said. "Of you, of the journey, of the future, but you made me feel safe." "You made me feel like I finally had a home," Sam said. "Not a place, but a person. You were my home, Hannah, you still are." Hannah turned to kiss him, as comfortable and familiar as if they had been married 50 years instead of 24. "I love you," she said. "Thank you for stopping that day. Thank you for not riding past." "Best decision I ever made," Sam said, pulling her close. "Though I am pretty sure you would have survived anyway. You are stronger than you think." "Maybe, but I am glad I did not have to find out." They sat together as the stars emerged overhead, the same stars they had watched on so many nights during their journey from Nebraska to Colorado. Their children's laughter drifted from the main house, where the family was gathered for Sunday dinner. The cattle lowed in the distance, and somewhere a nightbird sang. It was not the life Hannah had planned, but it was the life she was meant to have. And as she sat there with Sam's arm around her, surrounded by the evidence of the family and home they had built together, she knew she would not change a single thing. Years continued to pass, each one adding new memories and experiences to their shared story. Rose married a doctor from Denver in 1894, and they settled in Silverton, where he opened a practice. Their first child, a daughter named Hannah after her grandmother, arrived in 1895. William expanded the ranch's operations, adding new pastures and breeding programs. He proved to be as skilled a rancher as his father, and Sam gradually turned over more of the daily management to him, content to take on an advisory role. Sam and Hannah's cabin had been expanded over the years, with additional rooms added as their family grew and their needs changed. The bookshelf Hannah had started with a few borrowed volumes now overflowed with books, and the walls were covered with photographs documenting their life together. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1897, their children and grandchildren threw them a party that included half the town of Silverton. People came from all over the valley to celebrate the couple who had become symbols of enduring love and partnership. 30 years, Hannah marveled as they danced together in the town hall, Sam's arms strong around her despite the silver in his hair. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "I would do it all again," Sam said. "Every moment, every challenge, as long as it led me back to you." The new century arrived, bringing changes to their mountain valley. The railroad expanded, bringing more people and modern conveniences. Silverton grew from a rough mining town into a proper city. But some things remained constant: the mountains, the ranch, and the love between Sam and Hannah. In 1902, they celebrated the birth of their 8th grandchild, and Sam joked that they were building their own small army. Hannah, now 57 and still teaching part-time despite her age, said she could not imagine anything more wonderful than being surrounded by family. "When I think about that day the wagon train left me behind," she said one evening as they sat on their porch, "I realize it was the best thing that could have happened to me. If they had waited, if they had come back, I would have gone to California with people who did not care about me. I would have married some farmer I did not love, and I would have spent my life wondering what I had missed. Instead, you got stuck with a wandering cowboy with no prospects, Sam said, his eyes twinkling. Instead, I got the love of my life, Hannah corrected. I got adventure and partnership and a family I adore. I got everything that matters. Sam pulled her close, and they watched the sun set over the mountains they both loved, the mountains that had become their home. As the years advanced, Sam's health began to decline, though he remained active and engaged with the ranch well into his 60s. In 1908, he finally retired completely, turning the ranch over to William with absolute confidence that it was in good hands. "I am proud of you, son," Sam told William on the day they made it official. "You have taken what Fletcher and I built and made it even better. That is exactly what it should be, each generation building on what came before." Hannah retired from teaching the same year, and she and Sam settled into a quieter life focused on their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, who now numbered more than a dozen. Their cabin remained the heart of the extended Foster family, the place where everyone gathered for holidays and celebrations. On a crisp October morning in 1912, Sam and Hannah took a ride up into the mountains, following trails they had ridden hundreds of times over the years. They stopped at a high meadow with a view that stretched for miles in every direction. "This is where I want to be buried," Sam said suddenly. "When my time comes. Right here, where I can look out over everything we built." "Do not talk about dying," Hannah said, though she knew it was a conversation they needed to have. They were both in their late 60s now, and while they remained healthy, neither of them was foolish enough to think they had unlimited time left. "I am not afraid of it," Sam said, taking her hand. "I have had a good life, better than I ever imagined possible, and I have had it with you. That is all any man could ask for." Hannah squeezed his hand, blinking back tears. "Promise me something. Promise me that whatever time we have left, we will not waste a single day." "I promise," Sam said, and he kept that promise for the rest of his life. They had 5 more good years together. 5 years of watching their grandchildren grow, of quiet evenings on their porch, of family gatherings and community events. 5 years of the simple, profound joy of growing old with someone you love. Sam passed away peacefully in his sleep in January of 1917, 2 months shy of his 72nd birthday. He simply did not wake up one morning, and while Hannah's grief was profound, she took comfort in knowing he had not suffered, that he had died the way he lived, with quiet dignity. They buried him in the high meadow as he had requested, and what seemed like the entire population of Silverton turned out for the funeral. Speaker after speaker rose to talk about Sam Foster's integrity, his kindness, his skill as a rancher, and his devotion as a husband and father. "He was the best man I ever knew," William said, his voice breaking. "He taught me how to work hard, how to treat people fairly, how to love deeply. Everything I am, I owe to him." Hannah stood by the grave after everyone else had left, talking to Sam as if he could still hear her. "I will miss you every day," she said. "But I am not angry that you are gone, because we had 49 years together, and they were the best years of my life. You saved me, Sam. Not just that day in Nebraska, but every day after. You saved me by showing me what love really means." She stayed strong for her children and grandchildren, remaining the matriarch of the family, the one everyone turned to for advice and comfort. But privately, Hannah felt Sam's absence like a missing limb, a constant ache that never fully went away. She lived for 3 more years, still sharp and engaged until the very end. She taught her great-grandchildren to read, told them stories about the old days, about the wagon train that left her behind and the cowboy who had stopped to help. "Your grandfather was a hero," she told them. "Not because he did anything dramatic or famous, but because he was kind when he could have been cruel, generous when he could have been selfish. He saw someone who needed help and he helped. That is the kind of person you should all aspire to be. Hannah passed away peacefully in her sleep in March of 1920, and they buried her beside Sam in the high meadow. The entire Foster family gathered there, 3 generations strong, a testament to the love that had started on a dusty Nebraska trail more than 50 years before. "They were extraordinary," Rose said, standing between her children and grandchildren. "They loved each other completely, built an amazing life together, and raised us to understand what really matters." William placed flowers on both graves. "They showed us that home is not a place. It is a person. And if you are lucky enough to find that person, you hold on to them with everything you have." The Foster family continued to thrive for generations. The Double F Ranch remained in family hands, passed down from William to his children and grandchildren. The cabin where Sam and Hannah had built their life was preserved as a family museum of sorts, filled with their belongings and photographs documenting their remarkable journey. And every year on the anniversary of Sam's death, the entire Foster family would make the pilgrimage up to that high meadow to leave flowers and tell stories, ensuring that new generations would know about the wagon train that left a young woman behind in the dust, and the cowboy who had stopped and said, "You will travel with me now." It was a love story that had started with an act of kindness and grown into a legacy that touched hundreds of lives. It was proof that sometimes the worst moments in our lives lead us exactly where we are meant to be, and that true love is not found in grand gestures but in daily choices to show up, to care, to build something meaningful together. In the high meadow where they rest, the wind still whispers through the grass, and the mountains still stand eternal watch. And if you listen carefully on quiet evenings, you can almost hear the echo of their laughter, the sound of 2 people who found each other against all odds and built a life that mattered, a love that endured, and a family that carries their story forward into the future. The wagon train had left Hannah Kimball behind in the dust of a Nebraska trail in 1867. But Sam Foster had stopped, had offered his hand and his protection, had given her not just survival but a future beyond her wildest dreams. And together, they had proven that the best love stories are not the ones that start perfectly, but the ones where 2 people choose each other every day, through hardship and joy, building something extraordinary from the simplest of beginnings. That is the story the Foster family tells, generation after generation. That is the legacy Sam and Hannah left behind. And that is why, more than a century later, their great-great-grandchildren still visit that high meadow, still leave flowers on those graves, still remember the cowboy and the woman he saved, and the love that changed everything.